Number 7 will be Jessica Whitaker.
Thank you for having me here today. I've spent most of my life in Kaufman County, minus when I was in college and a few years in Houston for work. When I would leave those places and come to Kaufman, I would say I was coming home. When I would leave Kaufman County and go back, I was going to college, I was going to Houston. This has and will always be my home. If I put a statue, a sign, a bench, or anything else on courthouse property and left it there, it would be removed because it doesn't belong to the county and it doesn't belong on county property. I've heard it said by supporters of this statue that the statue does not belong to the county, therefore the county shouldn't be able to remove it. If it doesn't belong to the county, it doesn't belong at the county courthouse, period. At the last meeting, a woman stated, and I'm paraphrasing, if we took down that statue, it would be as disrespectful as saying the Vietnam War Memorial should be taken down because the war was not agreed with by many people. What she and so many others fail to see in comparison is the Vietnam Memorial is for soldiers of the United States of America. The WW2 monument is for soldiers of the United States of America. The WW1 Liberty Memorial, soldiers of the United States of America. Not for enemies of the Union, not for enemies against the United States of America. There's no memorials on U.S. soil of any kind to Viet Congs, Nazis, Japanese, not Austria-Hungary, not the Ottoman Empire. There are no monuments to Hitler, Mussolini, Saddam Hussein, Stalin, or Osama bin Laden. Because we went to war with them. Our great nation went to war with them. The same as our nation went to war with the Confederacy. The Confederate soldiers were not soldiers of the United States of America. They were enemies fighting against soldiers of the United States of America. We do not celebrate those who go to war against our country. We memorialize those who fight for our nation. Many compromises have been suggested. And in my opinion, the best compromise, if the people of Kaufman County really need a Confederate monument, let's place a trash can at the front of the courthouse with a Confederate flag in it. Let's send a message that those outdated and bigoted beliefs are where they belong. They are utter trash and belong in the garbage. Histories of hatred belong in books and museums so that we can remember not to repeat our past. But they do not belong at the doorway of our justice system, at the doorway of our courthouse. The statue needs to be removed so that our county can at least show the rest of the state, the rest of our region, and the rest of our country that we are not going to stand for racial injustice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Number 8 will be Brian Brown.
It's obvious to anybody who sees me here that I've been around long enough to experience some differences of opinion. In the time I've been alive, I've come to realize that 2 key elements make the difference in the quality of the lives we live and the impact we have on the world we live in. Those elements are humility and wisdom, and they have a place in every aspect of a successful life. The controversy surrounding the future of the Civil War statue, currently located outside the entrance to the courthouse, presents us with an opportunity excuse me, to apply those 2 elements to reach a positive solution that opens the door for constructive dialogue that will serve us all well into the future. Without that dialogue, there won't be any progress, and we'll find ourselves bitterly addressing a different conflict somewhere down the road. We need humility to accept the fact that people with cultural histories and backgrounds different from our own can be impacted entirely differently by the same thing, and we need wisdom to show them respect for their position. The courthouse is a building that serves all the citizens of Kaufman County, regardless of color or opinion on the Civil War history. Given that fact, it would seem like a logical solution to move the statue to a more appropriate location, where it can be prominently exhibited for those who feel it has a positive place in their lives. Why force people who are offended by or to be exposed to something that can be moved? We all live in the same county. There will be occasions in the future where the mutual respect we can establish here can come in handy working together. Respect is always more effective than anger, and contempt is in resolving differences. Anger and contempt are earned by giving anger and contempt. and respect is earned by giving respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 9 will be William Combs. You did not let us know what city you stay in.
Kaufman, Texas.
Kaufman, Texas.
I am, in fact, a 5th generation Kaufmanite. I practice law. My religion as well, downtown. I wrote an editorial, some of you might have seen in this week's paper, and I believe that will be distributed to the members of the commission pretty quickly. I want to make 4 points, very briefly. The first is basically that oftentimes when we think about the past, what we're looking for is a sense of comfort and continuity. But of course the past, much like the present, is the scene of conflict. If you look to it to discover continuity, you will oftentimes find it, even if you have to make it up. But if you want to be honest, you actually have to reckon with the history of conflict through time. You have to reckon with what happened in the past, how people were driven to do what they do and had the conflicts that they did. Second point, defenders of the Confederacy face a severe moral conundrum. It's one thing to lose a bloody and disastrous war. It's something else to reckon with the fact that the war was fought for a bad or unjust cause. Both of those things are psychologically traumatic things. And the loss of the Civil War, I think we all have to recognize, was a political, a moral, and an economic calamity for the South. Now, there are 2 ways we could actually react to that. One, we could, reckon with those facts. Reckon with the calamity, reckon with the injustice of our cause. But a much easier, a much more human thing to do is to tell a different story about what happened. To make it look like maybe slavery wasn't so bad. Maybe it was in a position that was foisted on us by something else. Maybe we were trying to get rid of it. Maybe it was for the greater good. And maybe we didn't even lose. Right? Maybe we didn't lose at all. Of course, that's essentially what happened in the aftermath of that loss. So the statue, as many other people have said today, is part of that counter-narrative. It's part of the narrative of just claiming that we ultimately weren't defeated, that our cause was ultimately in some way that's not immediately obvious and just. The Southern way of life is one of gentle manners, chivalry, happy things. And part of that's true. Just what it leaves out is the actual experience of the Black people. Oftentimes when you talk about history this way, you're omitting this phrase. Southern life is about genteel manners for white people. Right? So bear that omission in mind. Now, the last thing I want to do, a couple of C words. We oftentimes hear the statue is spoken of as a cenotaph. Cenotaph is a funny Greek word. It actually means empty tomb or empty grave. Nobody ever in the history of establishing this monument called it a cenotaph. It's not a marker to this regard. It's just not. I'd like you to think instead of a coffle. I'm almost done. Does anybody know the word coffle? Anybody? So when slaves were driven south, they were put in chains. They were chained from neck to neck, from arm to arm, and they were walked. Forced marched thousands of miles.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm done.
Thank
I
you.
just want you to think.
I didn't hear the timekeepers at time. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
I was so enthralled by
Number 10 will be Nathan Fierce.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Fierce and I live in Maybank. I am for removing the Confederate statue in front of the Kaufman County Courthouse. I am anti-socialist, anti-fascist, and anti-communist. I am against the fascism of Antifa and the socialist racism of the Ku Klux Klan. I do not think the idea of freedom and liberty are an American myth. I have listened with sadness as calls have been made to destroy Abraham Lincoln statues. I was appalled when the statue of Frederick Douglass was destroyed in New York. There appears to be folks who want to change the historical narrative, and they're prepared to jettison anybody, even the two of the most important leaders in American history. I mention this because I'm not one of those folks. We know more about what happened in our past than at any time in American history. We know how brutal slavery was. We know from historical documents that slavery is the reason for the southern states seceding. We know it was ex-Confederate soldiers that started the Ku Klux Klan. We know that many statues were erected throughout the 1900s, especially in the South. At the same time, Jim Crow laws were in full swing with lynchings, terrorizing, and cross burnings. We have all the evidence we need to justify moving the statue to a different place. This is not about whitewashing history. Just the opposite. It is a rejection of a false historical narrative. The narrative that the Confederacy was just fighting for its rights against an oppressive northern United States is false. In light of the fact that Confederate soldiers fought to keep slavery and a racial hierarchy, removing the statue is a good compromise. Whatever the committee recommends, I am thankful to live in a place where individual liberties are protected and people are allowed to voice their opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 11, Rob Jones.
I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity to once again stand before you. And as I told you last time, I'm an attorney who is representing a number of people from Kaufman County. I was admonished by my clients after the last time I was here to tell you that they are taxpayers and voters. So I will duly report to them that I have corrected that misapprehension that you might have about them merely living here. I have seen over 3 meetings now that I've been here, there is a tremendous earnestness, a tremendous degree of sincerity among each of you to try to get this right, to try to fathom what the opinions are of people in Kaufman County. And I applaud you on that. Your meetings in other locations and breaking down to smaller groups, you're working very hard at this. Wouldn't it be wonderful, though, if we knew what the people of Kaufman County really thought? If there were a way to know that, not just for the folks that can get out, that can drive at night like a number of my clients can't. So they have to have someone to speak for them. Would it be wonderful if we knew what the people of Kaufman County really thought? Well, I'm here to tell you we do. In the year 2020, in the spring, we had primaries in both the Democratic and Republican parties. There were a total of 20,445 votes were cast in both primaries. 14,899 Republican votes in their primary. And I realize not everybody here is a Republican, but that's okay. Out of their people that voted in their primary, there were 97.56 that voted for keeping all monuments, all historical monuments, artifacts, and buildings. That was on the ballot. Now, if we take the number of Democratic votes, there were 5,546 of those. and 14,899 Republican votes. The percentage on that, if you consider every one of the Democratic votes as removing monuments, it is still 75%, almost 75% of the Kaufman County voters voted for retaining the monuments. We've got our figures. We don't need anything more.
Time.
Thank you.
May I speak, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Bill.
May I speak? I think I'm on. We ask everyone to be respectful of others. If you've had the opportunity to speak at whichever organization, because you get one form, whether you are a participant in speaking, and you will get the same information on your survey form if you choose not to speak. So what we ask is that you speak the one time and give others the opportunity to speak as well. And also complete your own forms. We're all here. Complete your own form to speak, or your own form on the survey. Because we're all here every week. We've had these meetings. And we're suggesting, or I'm suggesting, that you did not complete that form, Mr. Jones, yourself, because we have people on the desk that are wanting to make just one voice, one time. So we let you speak twice, sir.
That's fine.
And we're okay with that.
And there was no, in the ground rules of this, there was nothing said about how many times the person could speak.
Thank you, sir.
That's correct.
Please have a seat.
Thank you. Thank you. Number 12 will be Beverly Hanks. Is that Harris?
Thank you, those of you on the committee that are volunteering to do this. My name is Beverly Harris. My husband and I moved to Kaufman in 1995. As a Vietnam-era Army veteran, I support removing the Confederate statue from the courthouse grounds. I do not believe that it belongs on any federal, state, county, city, or any property that is sustained by American tax dollars. In my opinion, when they seceded from the Union, the Confederate States committed treason as defined in Article 3, Section 3 of the American Constitution. Let me quote that article for you. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Despite the argument that this monument represents our Southern heritage, its sole purpose, and that of others like it throughout the South, is for the purpose of continuing the myth that the Civil War was fought over states' rights. In fact, the specific state right that was being fought over was the right to own, to own another human being. I'll say it again, the right to own another human being. These monuments began appearing throughout the South around 1910 as the rebel soldiers began to age and die. The mythology needed to be perpetuated. They represent a heritage of hate, racism, and white supremacy. They sustain systemic racism. In Kaufman County, it causes doubts in the minds of people of color that justice will be equal under the eyes of the law. This heritage fosters an ongoing separation of humanity and a challenge against our spiritual struggle to see one another in God's image. Our true heritage is not a myth. It is revealed each time we say, "Y'all come back." Each time we return to a restaurant because we were served real sweet tea. It's in our music from Austin and Nashville and Memphis and New Orleans. The entire world knows that the South is the birthplace of jazz and the blues. Our heritage is in our great Southern writers. Harper Lee, Truman Capote, William Faulkner, Zora Neale Hurston, to name a few. And no region in this country can surpass our art of Southern cooking. Who else takes a road trip just because someone mentioned a new barbecue that we need to try? It appears that so far we are unable to accomplish what President Lincoln had asked of us, that we bind up the nation's wounds and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves. What is required is the willingness to be honest about the placement and ongoing existence of the statue on the square. We need to let go of the pride and arrogance that keeps it there. Only then can we begin to heal the open wound of the racism that exists in our nation. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. What city are you from?
I live here in Kaufman. I can walk to the square every morning.
All right, thank you. Number 13, Alan Portery.
Good evening. Thank you all for dedicating your time to this issue and allowing citizens to voice their concerns. My name is Alan Portery, and I come to you today as a 13-year resident of Kaufman County. I'm a 2016 graduate of North Forney High School and a recent graduate of Cornell University. One of the very first lessons I learned in my childhood was to treat others how I wanted to be treated, to show compassion and empathy, to try to understand what it is to walk in someone else's shoes. So I understand that the statue in front of our courthouse represents a symbol of pride for those whose family members may have been associated with the soldiers who fought on the side of Confederacy. I also understand that the statue in front of our courthouse represents a symbol of oppression and hate for many others, including myself. I am here representing the next generation of Kaufman County. And commissioners, or whoever this goes to, as the next generation stands before you today, I ask if this is the legacy you want to leave for us. By leaving the Confederate statue in front of the courthouse, you are welcoming a legacy of hate, white supremacy, and inequality as the beacon of Kaufman County's court system. I urge you to remove the statue immediately, along with any and all remnants of the legacy of white supremacy in our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 14, T.D. Loretta? Jenny Loretta.
From Virginia. And I hate to tell you, but it's pretty loud. I'm one of those damn Yankees. But I've been down here for over 36 years. My children were born here. I met my husband down here. But this really upsets me. This is not a political position. This is a moral and humane position. It is so stressful to think that we want to perpetuate the injustices to our fellow citizens. I really, of course, you can tell I'm in favor of moving the statue to a cemetery somewhere would be nice. But to have it in front of the courthouse for all to come and see in our downtown square of Kaufman, I'm in Terrell, or Oak Ridge, to be exact, is horrible. May I also point out, piggyback on what he said about the future people. We moved into our house 4 years ago. Across the street was a field full of cows and bulls, and I was so excited coming from Dallas. They said, oh no, they will never sell that property. Well, now there are 230 houses going in over there, just now 34. And you know who's going to be coming? The people from Dallas, the people from maybe Arlington, or those places. The diversity here is going to be out of the roof. And they vote, just like our people vote. They vote. And we'll see what they say. And actually, what you were talking about, that was the discussion of one of the things that they were bringing up on the Republican agenda. They didn't vote, yes, take down that, don't take down the statues. They were just voting to say, we want that to be included in our, yes, it is. I saw it.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
It was. In fact, people had a hard time understanding some of those, but that's another thing. But, yes, please, take this statue, move it to another place. I respect that part of history, but there's no place for it here. Thank you.